Yeah, yeah, that's very true. One of the things about the shooting line that I thought was interesting that I know people with rollers are doing is the shark fin tab, um, the rest tab, and they're putting the line through the middle part to keep it out of interfering with the bands back on the shark fin tabs. Um,
And I know
like
what
you
you
know what I
mean.
mean, like where you got your
Hmm.
rest tab in the middle. Yeah, yeah. What I noticed was that, and they say like if the shooting line pulls on the spear, it's more in the middle rather than affecting the flight by tugging on the back.
Yeah, I know
Um,
what you mean.
which I was like, yeah, I was like, that makes sense. Okay, but I remember when I shot my gun, I had the shark fin on the tab and I had the hole for the shooting line in the back, and I was shooting
Oh,
cable. And when I noticed, yeah, and I noticed the cable, the bend radius of the cable is not, but I remember I fired it and I felt this like pull weird thing, and it wasn't until I looked back, and I missed the fish, and I was like, how did that happen? And it wasn't until I looked back that I realized there was an entanglement, but it was this the turning radius on the cable was so tight or was so big that to fit through the bridle, the muzzle, that it like
yes,
popped it through.
yeah,
And then
I
I
know what you mean.
realized, yeah, I needed to either get a new shaft to try to minimize the amount of cable I have, or use just my Dyneema that I always use.
Yeah,
Um, but
the
yeah,
Dyneema seems
what do
to
you think?
have multiple purposes now. Um, from just being real line, is having great success as shooting line too. And the best thing about it, you can get strength of a Dyneema just as good as cable in a very, very small diameter with adequate stiffness that makes it a wonderful material to use. And I can't wait to see the day where we get the Dyneema to a point where we start using that for the slip tips. Because to me, I think that Dyneema is much more abrasion resistant than the Spectras.
Yes, 100% agree with
Because
you.
I
I don't think people realize the difference.
well,
You
I
know?
shot this. I was blue water diving about a couple of years ago. A couple of friends, and then this big bait ball came in, and all these kahalas came in, and the big kahala came in. I shot him with my gun with the Spectra. It was like a 30, 40 pound kahala, but the Spectra, I assumed, was rubbing on one of the bones in his head, and it cut, and I lost the fish, and I lost my slip tip. So that's $100 gone right there. And I was thinking to myself, if we could somehow put this Dyneema on here, I think I wouldn't have lost the fish, wouldn't have lost my slip tip. I think it's a more superior product overall, the Spectra, and I think we're gonna start seeing that route happening real soon, to where Dyneema is gonna be a standard on almost everything spearfishing.
So I think as far as rigging, Brett, in Hawaii especially, having the amount of reef, coral, structure, ledges, overhangs, if you're still using monofilament, every time that fish wraps that reef, it's chafing. And unless you're super diligent about changing it out, there will come a time that you will lose the shaft, you will lose the fish. And another problem I see with monofilament is it trains. So when you wrap the muzzle and you come back to the line release and back up and back again, if you ever notice when you remove it from the gun, those loops are trained into it.
Yeah, it's got memory.
So
Yeah,
when you pull that trigger, that dumps off the side of the gun, and that actually increases the drag of the forward projection of the shaft. But this is like nerdy stuff,
yeah,
right? This has to do with like hydrodynamics, and,
yeah.
you
I
know.
like this stuff.
But it's true, So if someone disagrees with that, we can agree to disagree. But physics are factual.
So going back to what you mentioned about people rigging their shooting line in the middle on the rest tab on the roller guns to prevent tangles and stuff like that. Um, there's a couple of variables with that. It depends on your muzzle design, how wide your bridges are, what kind of bridge you have. Uh, to me, rigging your shaft line on the middle and the rest tab is not good because it creates a certain kind of drag, a certain kind of pull on the middle of the shaft as it's firing. You're going to want to rig that shaft line on the rear so there'd be less drag and the shaft can actually be more free and be able to fly in its trajectory how it wants to. And also, as far as drag of the shaft, you're going to want to always go 2 wraps. A single wrap will create more drag and more pull on the rear end of the shaft, and that shaft will kind of go flying like that. Where if you have 2 wraps, a looser shaft line, a more free shaft line, your shaft will come out more flatter. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I noticed when I used to have single wrap guns on like a 130, thinking, oh, this is I can probably get away with this since the gun is real long and have good range. I kind of noticed my shaft flying out like that. It's weird on a single wrap, but when the shaft is more free or less how you see that, less drag on it with two wraps, it flies a lot flatter.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, it
hydrodynamic.
just flies a lot flatter. There's nothing holding
Yeah,
it back almost. Where on a single wrap, it seems like it's kind of holding the shaft back. Yeah, I mean
that's
that's what I've
interesting.
learned on single wraps and double wraps. Never single wrap a gun. You're not going to get a proper shaft trajectory. We should be shooting flat.
I mean, really, the only exception to that is if you're diving in dirty, close quartered situations where, let's say, you're hunting for lingcod and you got 5 feet of visibility and you're using a 60 centimeter
Yeah,
gun.
yeah,
Then, of course, you want a single wrap because a double wrap's going to get wrapped up in the structure. You got 5 feet of viz. You're going to spend the rest of your afternoon trying to untangle that shit. Right? So that's kind of everything has a place. But for the majority of hunting situations, you're better off doing a double wrap, letting that shaft go to its full potential. I mean, I will rig a gun to where it pulls 3 feet of reel line out.
yeah.
So it's not, so its effective range is beyond the double wrap because it's powered properly.
Yeah. And going back
Right.
to like this Dyneema thing for shooting line, how I feel it's gonna set a standard. A lot has to do with it with different colors. Like Brian was just saying, like for guys who are probably diving like Northern California, like mad guys, when it's real dirty water, I think a white Dyneema would be ideal for them. That way, if they have to surface back up, they can actually maybe hopefully see the white Dyneema sticking out of the hole, so they know where to dive down back to and whatnot. So I think those different colors of shooting line is going to have definitely a purpose as well. Even if you're like in Hawaii, we're diving in green water, a pink shooting line stands out at 30 feet real bright, and stuff like that, or even red, yellow, stuff like that. So Dyneema is the way to go in everything, I think now. And
As opposed to black mono. Because
yeah,
imagine you shot a fish 60 feet down, wrapped a couple coral heads, hit underneath the ledge. You got to do a couple recovery dives, and you're trying to plan your dive. Okay, I got to go to that coral head first and unwrap that. Then I got to go to that coral head and unwrap that. If you can visualize the line from the surface, you can plan that out. If you can't, you're just doing a blind drop and you're like, where the hell's that line? Okay, I did that. Now where the hell's that line?
you're following the line through these coral heads with like black or clear mono. And I remember this when I used to always use mono. Like, oh, okay, it's going this way, it's going this way. Where you're on the surface and you see that bright yellow shooting line, Dyneema, like, okay, boom, 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 boom. So I'm actually going to start right here, unwrap it right here, and pull it out this way. So like what Brian said, you can visualize your plan of uh, attack when you're on the top, and you can know exactly and how safely you can untangle your fish and whatnot. So Dyneema is going to set some standards. I see a really good future for Dyneema, and it's weird that I still see some old school guys still using mono, and I try to persuade them, hey man, try to use this Dyneema stuff. You'll save so much money on mono. You never use it again for shooting line. But they're just old school guys set in their ways. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But if you're a diver and you shoot a lot of fish with mono and you're losing a lot of fish because reef cuts are mono, time to make that switch to Dyneema for sure.
So I've got
Yeah, I shoot nothing
so
but
as far
Nothing
as
Dyneema.
but
as
Dyneema.
far as
Yeah.
longevity, my 90 centimeter single that I use all the time, and when I say all the time, I'm talking about diving anywhere from 1 to 3 days a week. Which equals out to 30 to 50 or more dives per year. I've had that same 1.4 Dyneema on there for over a year. And I have shot dozens and dozens of fish in reef, wrapped coral, wrapped under the structure, recovered them, looked down the length of the Dyneema, no damage.
Yeah. And you got to think too, because
Yep,
the
I agree.
longevity of the shooting line, you buy one roll of Dyneema, that's going to last you a lifetime. So you're making one initial investment of 1.4 Dyneema, and it's going to provide shooting line for 4, 5, 6, 7 guns, and it's going to last a lifetime. You never have to buy another roll of Dyneema ever again. You know, that's how badass that stuff is. And I don't know if people know the history of
Yeah.
Dyneema. So back in so when Dyneema first came out, I think it was like 18 years ago, when it first started kind of making an approach to the spearfishing world. Uh, Dyneema was originally used for sails for sailboats. I don't know if people knew that, because of its lightness and its strength. They wanted a rope to outline their sails, but still be light enough where the wind can catch the sail. And so they were using Dyneema for sails. I think somebody in Australia discovered Dyneema and started using it for shooting line way, way back when, but it never caught momentum for some reason. Just like roller guns. Roller guns is old technology from back in, I think, the early 70s. The California guys invented the roller gun, actually. And it kind of gained momentum, and then it lost, and it disappeared, and now it reappeared. It's trippy, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of a trip too, because I remember first seeing, it's funny you mentioned the sailing thing, first seeing Dyneema at work and then getting it for work, because we really needed strong line, at West Marine, and the raw blow line or whatever, raw line, I can't remember exactly the brand, but and then trying all these different types of Spectra, Dyneema, but it was all the sailing products that they were using. Because in my mind, I was like, I need the thinnest, strongest stuff I could find. And then it was like, okay, this stuff tangles really easy. This stuff's not as abrasion resistant. And just going through that trial period. Um, and yeah, like you guys said, though, doing that, I learned so much more. I became like a line expert, right? Because you're just like constantly like learning, not an expert, but I mean, your knowledge of what the definition of spectra and Dyneema is and the different kinds, hollow core, whatever it is, you learn so much more that way. So somebody had asked about saying that cable shooting line was bad. Was it damage the muzzle of roller guns? Have
I
you
mean,
heard that
it really
before?
depends how you're rigging it, right? So a lot of the muzzles that are being manufactured today may have a metal bridge, right? And some of them may have a plastic
Uh huh.
bridge. And if it's composed of plastic, you want something that's at least 30 to 40% nylon, because that increases the structural strength of it, as opposed to it just being brittle and chipping. But that goes back to, how are you rigging it, right? Are you making the proper size loop? Are you crimping appropriately? Do you have fibers that are loose? Are you making sure that it's tight after it's loaded? I think those are all variables unique to the gun that makes a difference whether you're going to get wrapped up in your line or whether you're going to cause damage to your muzzle. So it's difficult to do a hard and fast, but in all reality, cable shooting line doesn't really have a place for many species. Unless you're specifically targeting dogtooth, where where there's dogtooth, there's a shit ton of sharks that are going to bite through your line and you're going to lose your fish in your shaft. You really don't need to shoot with cable. Like, you don't need it to shoot a wahoo or a mahi or even a tuna. Really, dogtooth is the only species that cable is necessary because the sharks are guaranteed going to be on that fish and they're going to bite through your Dyneema.
Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. Yeah. I mean, and the area you're hunting, but with a combination of the reef, which at least when that dogtooth runs, Dyneema does stretch like 10%, but it can stretch. With cable, there is zero stretch. And, you know, but with the reef being the way it is and those fish that run and then the sharks, like it just makes this perfect, like, combination of you need to use cable.
Yeah.
Like, done, you know? I know people do it with Dyneema, but I'm just not going to take that risk.
Yeah, if you're going to spend thousands of dollars to charter a boat and go somewhere exotic to shoot dogtooth, you want to make sure that you're using the appropriate gear. You know, but there's also the caveat to using cable is cable trains, cable kinks. If you use it on your slip tip, once it's kinked, guess what? You got to change it. Right? So it's kind of, you know, it could be cost prohibitive. It could be labor intensive. But if you're spending $5,000 and you're trying to land a dream fish, fuck it. I'm spending it.
100%. Not a boy. There we go. We're getting somewhere now. No, I agree with you. Somebody also, I saw your response, some of your responses to the questions when you asked, "Hey, what were some topics you'd be interested when we're chatting?" And somebody said the blue, was it the blue parrotfish debate?
Oh, I'll let Al take that one.
So I guess
because this is coming from a mainlander, dude. I don't know. I mean, I know a little
I guess
bit
I'll be
about
the bad guy here, and
conversation.
I'll lose friends over this topic. But no, I mean, people in Hawaii do whatever. I don't care what people do, but you know, I just hope people have like a sense of like sustainability when they do this. But as far as like uhus go, a lot of people don't understand. Well, how should I start this? Uhus are great. They're tasty. I see why people love them. I see why people shoot them. But in my lifetime of diving here on Kauai, I've seen a huge depletion in the population of uhus here. And that's mostly due because a lot of people are shooting the blue ones, the males. Okay. So parrotfish, uhus, they have a huge role in the ecosystem. They eat dead coral so new coral can grow. Okay. And once you start eliminating that fish out of the ecosystem, you're going to have a lot of dead coral. No new coral can grow. You're going to have a shitty ecosystem with barely any life. With uhus, most people don't realize the life cycle of the uhu. Uhu is a harrowfish. You're going to have one male to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 females. Now, that one male, that blue one, is going to be breeding with all these females, okay? It takes about 8 to 10 years for a female to turn into a male. So if you take that one male out of that harem, it's going to take the other female about 6 to 8 years to become a male to breed. So you're going to have a 6 to 8 year period where they won't be reproducing. So if you keep shooting all the uhus, they're going to be gone. So, I mean, you can shoot uhus, just leave the blue ones alone. You know, they're the breeders, and the perfect size ones are the small 2-3 pounders, and they're all red. That means they're still female. Now, when you have the uhu as a red head and green body, that means they're already a terminal male. They're already reproducing. They haven't completely changed their color yet. Okay. There's a reason why Maui banned all taking of blue uhus. And I just read a report about a year ago on the uhu population in Maui. It has come back so well that it's amazing the comeback that fish has made. And we kind of need to do that here in Kauai, you know.
But But I think it kind of boils down to what we initially talked about in the way of being a responsible spearfisherman, because we have the ability to pick exactly what we want. There's no bycatch, right? It's not like fishing where you don't know what's going to bite your line. And you can always catch and release, but sometimes if you pull a fish up from deep water, they implode. So you can't put it back. But when you have that ability to pick and choose, it's your responsibility to understand the species you hunt. So a lot of people may not have known the uhu's role in the ecosystem. They also produce sand, which helps with beach erosion. If you take them all, not only do you have a dead reef, you have nothing but reef, right? So all of your beaches erode, the sand doesn't get replaced.
One uhu produces 2,000 pounds of sand a year. One uhu. So if you got 10 uhus,
Holy shit.
yeah, you got 20,000 pounds of sand per year. That's how much sand those things produce. I mean, everything in the ocean has a specific role it plays to sustain the ecosystem. Like, I'm no biologist, but this is all common sense shit. You gotta understand where you're hunting and what role it plays in this environment, you know? So, I mean, people can, in Hawaii, they can keep shooting blues, whatever, I don't give a fuck, but
don't say shit when there's no fucking uhus left.
Exactly. Don't be a fucking bitch about it. There's no fish because you fucking shot them all, you know. But like I said, I don't give a fuck. Keep shooting them. Keep shooting them because I want to see you bitch and cry so I can say I told you so, motherfucker. So that's just me, though.
All right. I love it. Yeah, no, we have similar situations, with our fish. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody does, right? But because every fish is unique in its own way, right? Um, but I had talked to you about this before when I saw like somebody uh, had a dock just littered with mahi. There was probably like 20, I don't know, 30 mahi, but people, and to someone that doesn't know, going back to like the responsibility, like it looks like you just went crazy and shot or caught all these things. So it doesn't look real good. But then again, if you were to dive further into it, they reach, 20 pounds in a year and sexual maturity within a few months. Like, so it's a very sustainable fish, which is great. But then it's like, does that help the image that we want? Do I really fucking need to go? Like the limit here is 10, and I've been putting some stuff out. I know a lot of other people have, but it's like been the most insane, Dorado Mahi season for us that I ever remember. And I just think they're like my favorite fish looking and everything because it's just so cool. And they're the novelty of it. We don't get them here all the time, right? So I jumped in the water last week and, there was just hundreds of
That's
them.
so sick.
And like, yeah, it's so cool. I shot like 5 and then I just started swimming with them,
Well,
and it's
once you
like,
have enough fish, let's say for the week, what's the point in
yeah,
overtaking? I mean, we'll see like during ahi
right.
season over here, the bites on fire, and these fuckers are pulling 7, 10 ahis in the boat, and they went out with 80 pounds of ice. So all those fish come in, they're
Right.
fucking burnt. They'll be 50 to 100-pound ahis in the fucking dumpster at the washdown. What's the point of that?
Wow. Yeah. So we could talk specifically about that too, because a lot of people don't understand why tuna are so unique in that regard of burning up and all of that, because they're cold or they're warm blooded, number one. And we see it out here with bluefin where you don't even necessarily want to throw them on ice initially because they'll try to heat themselves up and they'll not burn themselves up because they have the ability to bump their temperature up 20 degrees outside of sea temperature. But with the ahi where you guys are, I had no idea that was that bad. Like,
Well, the terrible part about it is when the ahi bite is on here, everybody wants to go catch an ahi. I mean, that's understandable. That's great, you know. But as far as some people's perspective of catching ahi and selling it, they don't realize when the bite's on, the price per pound for ahi drops significantly. It could be an average of $4.50 a pound, but when the bite's on, everybody's catching 7 to 10 fish per boat. That price of the ahi just went down to $1 a pound. And not only that, at that mass of a bite, you can't even give away that much fish. So about maybe 6 years
Right.
ago, we had this problem where everybody caught so much ahi, the price per pound went down to 75 cents per pound. People couldn't sell their fish. People couldn't make back their money for the expenses of the boat. People couldn't give away fish because people were giving each other away, giving each other so much ahi that people were like, "Oh no, I'm good, thank you." So you're left with a couple 100 pounds of fish, and you don't know what to do with it. Like Brian said, they were ending up in the dumpsters, which is sad.
Yeah, what a
Like
waste.
I go,
I
I
wish
go,
somebody would have called
I'll go
me.
fishing out with my jet ski, and I'll go bottom fishing. I'll catch 2, 3 fish, and I'm done. I'm coming home. I can load it.
Right.
I can load up my jet ski, no problem. I can catch a dozen fish, but why do I need a dozen fish for? You know. And then also, like people want. I understand. Having a very nice boat, that's badass. I mean, I dream of having a really nice boat and stuff like that too. But the nicer the boat, the bigger the boat, the more expensive it is. Before I bought this jet ski, I told myself, well, if I get this jet ski, expenses are going to be super low to run it. I wouldn't have that perspective in my head that, I got to sell fish to make up for gas money, to make up for maintenance. So I bought something that's cheap running where I actually go out and enjoy fishing and not having to worry about selling fish for expenses, like to pay for the boat and stuff like that, But a lot of people with big boats, they have to catch fish. They have to pay for the fuel. They have to pay for the maintenance. And they'll catch one fish. They'll be like, oh, the market's only 250. I got to catch 2 more, 3 more. And they're set in their mind and they keep fishing. They'll catch 2, 3 more. And, they'll come in and they'll just barely break even. And they'll go back out the next day to try and profit. But it's just a vicious cycle they're putting themselves into a lot of times. And that's when overfishing happens, right? So that's one aspect of
Right.
why overfishing happens. So
Less is more. I've said it in other podcasts too, where my first boat was a 16-foot aluminum, like a single 30 horse, and I miss that boat every day because you take it out to go do what I 90% of the time I dive just in the kelp beds, and that thing would be like $20 for the
exactly.
day. Just going to the same spot would be like 60 with a dual outboard, like, and then the time it takes to maintain it and the time it takes to wash it down. And it's like, man, I talked to John and he got his aluminum and I was like, yeah, I miss this, man. It's not every day you're going out or the time to go out, spend 12 hours, 16 hours chasing tuna around. Like that is the novelty of, now it's just, I want to get in the water. So it's the cheapest, best way to do that and enjoy it,
Yeah, I'm
you
not
know?
trying to get people to hate me about this ahi
Oh,
situation, but I just wish people would be a little bit more thoughtful in the process. And like, I don't ever want to see 150-pound tunas in a dumpster ever again. That was heartbreaking. That was made me kind of upset and angry. Just the waste. Is But I understand, people here, especially in Hawaii, like our fuel, our cost of living, our cost of parts maintenance are so expensive that they have to catch fish in order to enjoy fishing. They have to be able to sell it to enjoy
right.
fishing. But yeah, I mean, nothing against the ahi fishermen here, though. Just want to put that out there. I don't want to be hated. The
No,
next
it's
time I go in the
fine.
water, and be like, "Oh, there's Yangco, that fucker, talking shit." So I'm over that. So
So speak, let's have some, I got another question in regards to shaft size overhang, basically too. What is the ideal overhang, right? Because you see it across the board, and my understanding that I've learned is like 9 inches or whatever around that. But there's still people that maybe just have 3. There's still people that have like really, really long. Like, what is the ideal? What do you feel is the ideal length, and what are the repercussions if you get it wrong?
I'm gonna do the archery example.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the shaft overhang, I think there's a couple aspects to shaft overhang, or why some people prefer longer overhangs or shorter overhangs. When I was using wooden guns, I preferred longer overhangs because I would aim off the tip. It was really easy to aim with. It was dead nuts. Now I noticed with the shorter overhang, you get much better accuracy, much more penetration and whatnot. So I refer to as a bow and arrow setup. I refer to a shaft as an arrow. The longer the arrow, the more flex you're going to have. The shorter the arrow, the more stiffer it's going to have. The more it's going to be able to absorb more power, and it'll be able to be trajected properly and accurately. So it all depends on your length of gun, what you want to use it for, how easy you want to aim and whatnot. But for roller guns that I'm using now, I use a real short overhang, maybe 4 or 5 inches, because the trajectory of the shaft on the roller gun is so flat, it's just point and shoot. Where in a wooden gun, I noticed they'll have kind of an arch. The shaft would have kind of an arch, so I'd have to bring up my tip, aim off the tip, and then watch the shaft kind of arch and hit the fish. So it's all kind of depends on what you use, and the shorter the shaft, though, man, that added stiffness to absorb a little bit more power makes a huge difference for sure. And Brian can definitely add on more to this too because he experimented a lot with that shaft overhang stuff.
So there's a lot of different equations in the realm of powering, right? So you have to consider what's the mass of the object you're attempting to project. If you're using a 7 mil, which is 9/32 shaft, and you've got an excessive overhang of beyond 11 inches, expect a lot of shaft whip. And because you've increased the mass, now you attempt to increase the power to project it flatter, but in doing so, you increase the shaft whip because you put more power behind a wet noodle. If you want to get greater range, you need to increase the diameter of the shaft, which thereby makes the shaft stiffer. So if you want to use a shaft at a longer length, increase the diameter. If you want to use the shaft at a lesser diameter, shorten the shaft. But understand that the powering variable depicts how reactive that shaft's going to move through the water. So the common misconception is even with a roller, you can still overpower a 7 mil shaft because of its diameter, because of the amount of flex based on the power that's put behind it. So these are all equations that have to be tested. Control setting like a pool is ideal because you can get the exact distance from things. You don't have a cross current. You don't have a surge. You can actually focus on the grouping and the penetration values of things. So for anyone that wants to really geek out on it, that's how you figure it out. You could spend a whole week in a pool. Okay, let's try this shaft at this length, at this diameter with this powering variant. Now let's try to add 4 inches to the shaft and see what happens. Oh, it looks like it dropped. Okay, let's change the power curve. Let's change the power variable, right? So I think that's a huge limiting factor to people going from conventional to roller because they've gotten comfortable with powering conventionals. And when they try to cross over, they don't understand. You pull the trigger the first time, it doesn't feel like there's any juice behind it because it doesn't kick back at you. And then you go, okay, well, let's power it up. And how come the shafts aren't accurate anymore? Well, you just increase the shaft whip because you're not going to gain recoil because they cancel each other out. So this is where, if you really want to get into gun building or you really want to learn these things for yourself, you have to put the time in. And if you're not willing to do that, then pay a fucking professional to figure it out for you. Because that professional put that time in.
As far as shaft whip, shaft overhang goes, I saw something really unique about a year ago. This gun builder out of Florida, he was experimenting with carbon fiber shafts with titanium heads and a titanium rear with a Dyneema core. And I was like, "Whoa, how's it shooting?" He was kind of breaking down the science of it like that. And I was like, "Well, that carbon fiber is gonna have a lot of whip, a lot of flex, you know. He's like, well, no, really, because it shoots really fast. Because of its speed, it has super amount of penetration. And he'll, like, I'm not a physicist or an engineer, but he was trying to break it down to me, and it kind of made sense. So I tell him, hey, you ever think about making those carbon shafts spined in specific spines, like how an arrow is for different power weights? And he was like, no, never thought about that. I tell him, try and experiment with that. I tell him, I'm telling you this because you have the money to experiment with it. You've got the machine shop and all of this. And he never got back to me. I don't think he tried. I told him, well, you got to think of it this way. I shoot a 70-pound bow with a 350 spine, you know, and if you were to apply that kind of concept to a spear gun, knowing the amount of power those bands put out, you could spine a shaft properly and have that spine, have that shaft not whip and be able to shoot at its full power potential. And I was explaining this to him, and he was like really intrigued about it, but he never got back to me or whatever. So I don't know if he had actually gone that far with it, but I thought it was a cool concept that he tried to make carbon shafts, you know.
Well, I think about that, and then like also tungsten, like different
Yeah.
other metals that are either heavier or lighter, and if you change the diameter, would it go faster with a super thin? You know, all these crazy things that, like you said, I don't have the money or the machinery for it, so someone else could pick that
Well,
up and then
your
report back
tungsten
to us.
shaft's going to be upwards of $500 to $800 each because it's a very
Yeah, I
expensive,
saw
dense
that when
metal.
I looked into it.
Could you imagine shooting an 8 millimeter titanium shaft that never bends or breaks? You could shoot like dogtooth tuna or big bluefin tuna and never have to worry about that thing ever bending. It'd be like an one-time
Yeah,
initial investment for the rest of your life.
Until you lose it.
Yeah,
uh, yeah, and then you'd have every shaft manufacturer like hating, but yeah, being out of business or hating
yeah.
you, right? Because you designed something. But I know we got to get going here, but I also wanted to kind of close it out with uh, crazy Kauai stories. You guys live in Kauai, you grow up there. I mean, you follow Al, you know there's a lot of crazy
Fucking
shit going on
tourist,
all the
man.
time. He'll tell you.
Jesus.
These
Fucking
motherfucking
tourist, bro.
hollies, bro.
Yesterday, bro. Holy shit. I road rage big time yesterday. I was snapping. I was pissed. But anyway, yeah. That's my crazy quiet story. It's mostly tourists and road raging. Cause I'm driving everywhere all day, every day. Like I'm a landscaper. I'm driving from one job to another job to another job, and I gotta deal with all this, and it's just nuts. As far as diving goes,
Well,
I haven't had any.
yeah.
I think our island is unique in its shape as opposed to the other islands. We're very susceptible to the winds, to the swells, the tides. We have a lot of river outlets here. So if it rains, it can just turn to mud. Um, if there's a swell on one side of the island, it can wrap to the other side of the island. The topography is very different. Some on the south side, the reef maybe only goes out to about 45 feet, and then it pretty much becomes sand. So when you have a swell or an incoming tide, something that surge creates and kicks up the sand, it can make it green. Whereas other sections of the island may be more reef structure. And these are all like the variables that you learn as you go, right? Ideally, you get so experienced that you can look at the moon phase, you can look at the tide calendar, you can look at what the swell direction, the wind direction, and you can already know I'm going to dive here at this time of day and I expect to see this kind of fish. That should be everyone's goal. Because you're not out there
Right.
fucking around seeing nothing for 6 hours, right?
Well, and the other side of that is you learn those things when you're young, when you have that ability and the free time, so that when you get old and you have kids and you're busy, you got to pinpoint your days to go. You only get so many of them. For your wife is like, you better get your ass home.
Yeah.
If you got a
You
2
know what I
hour
mean?
diving
Like
window, you want to make sure you're going to be productive.
yeah,
Because if you don't bring home fish, you're not
right.
going to get to go diving as often as you want to.
That is 100% accurate. Like, yes. Back to the tourist thing. Al, let's just say, what are the top 3 things that you think that piss you off, or that you notice with tourists that tourists shouldn't do, just for everybody out there that's thinking about coming to the islands, that they shouldn't do when they get there?
Okay, so my pet peeve with tourists is they have to understand, they have to respect our people, our way of life, and our culture. They have to completely do that. Don't be fucking coming here being rude to locals, being fucking disrespectful to locals, disrespecting our culture, being racist against Hawaiians and shit like that, going into sacred places, fucking moving here or fucking developing on sacred land and shit like that. That's all disrespectful shit. My other thing is, this ain't the fucking mainland. Don't drive like a goddamn maniac. People drive defensively here, okay? If I'm ready to merge, if I'm in a merge lane ready to turn left, don't fucking come out of right field and try to move your way in here. You're gonna get a fucking punch in the face. That's another thing. And tipping your hospitality workers. A lot of my friends are in F&B hotels, and they tell me horror stories about how rude these people are. They don't tip and whatnot, and it's fucking sad. It really is. You know, I've worked in a restaurant for 20 years. Tipping is how we survive, it's how we pay the rent, it's how we pay our bills. And a lot of these tourists, I've been hearing horror stories. A lot of these tourists are going back down on tipping percentage, more like 12 to 15, maybe 18%. Nobody's tipping 20% anymore, and stuff like that. Take care. These tourists got to understand, Hawaii is completely based off tourism. These people who work in the hospitality industry are banking off you to pay their bills. Take care of them. That's all I ask. Is those 3 simple things: is drive good, respect our people and culture, and tip well. I mean, I don't know. It's getting worse, really. It really is.
When you say respect your people and culture, though, you're referring to like just be fucking courteous,
Yeah,
right? Which
it's
I feel
simple.
like that's across the board, though. That's
Well,
lacking,
if
especially. I
you
mean,
if
Exactly.
you stay at someone's home, you're not going to put your feet up on their table. You're not going to go rifling through their fridge. You're not going to use their expensive bathroom products. You're going to be respectful of your host.
So basically, like, there's an incident of a North Shore Queens bath. So in the wintertime, the county puts up a gate. They close Queens Bath. They don't allow people to walk down there because it's dangerous because of the huge north swells. We always have a handful of rescues and a handful of people who die up there. So there was a video going around Instagram a while back where this local guy was walking the reef down there and was telling the tourists, like, hey, I just want to let you know it's kind of dangerous today. You guys shouldn't be down here. I know for a fact the gate was closed, and the tourists were like, well, why are you down here? Well, and the local guy was being really nice. Like, well, I know these waters. I was born and raised up here. I know where the safe area is to stand on these rocks and my way through the cliffs. And so these tourists decided to get really hostile and really aggressive. Like, fuck, you can't tell us what to do and all this shit. It's like, this local guy was trying to warn them, don't get too close to the edge. You're gonna fucking die. And so, in this video, the father of the couple decides to come rushing in, try to slap the guy and attack the guy. That's just fucking disrespectful shit. You know what I mean? If a local guy comes up tells you, it's like, hey, don't get too close, you can get hurt, fucking respect that shit. You know? And I'm sorry to break it to a lot of you tourists, but the only reason why we're nice to you is because we're probably in the hospitality industry. Because if we saw you in the street in public, we probably wouldn't give a fuck about you, to be honest with you. Sorry to break it to you, but that's just the fucking truth. You know? No, and it's never been.
well, I mean, you're supposed to, Al. You're supposed to have aloha,
I
man.
do have
Like
aloha, and I'm
giving
sharing
and
this aloha with you,
respect.
so you can let the tourists know. Just be nice.
Yes, sir.
Aloha is kind of like
Al talks a big game, bro, but he's really
Yeah,
caring.
so
I'll be
it's
honest.
like, just be cool when you come here.
Sorry,
Just
go
be
ahead.
really nice and respectful, and you're gonna have a great time. You will, and you will make friends with the local people. You're gonna learn a lot and stuff like that, and We want you to come here. We want you to have a good time, but we want you to leave your shitty attitudes back at home. You know, yeah.
100%.
So, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't hate all tourists. I've met some really great tourists. For instance, like I have this family when I was a charter boat captain. I met this family from Texas. Amazing, amazing family. They came and fished with me for every year in the summertime for like 12 years in a row. And we got to know each other and whatnot and became really good friends and whatnot. And so, not all tourists are bad. I'm just giving tourists shit right now. And I just experienced a lot of
I
bullshit,
know.
that's why. But, just be cool. That's all. Just be cool. And like the saying
Yeah.
goes, like a lot of local people here for the tourists, either you're gonna adapt or get slapped. Same, so
Yep. Yeah. Brian, what were you going to say
I
about
was gonna
aloha?
say, aloha is very similar to respect, right? Respect needs to be earned. Whereas if you come over with the wrong mentality, park your car anywhere you want, trespass across somebody's property to get to some location you found in a guide map, leave your rubbish behind, don't expect any aloha
yeah,
because you're not putting out any
Right.
respect.
you get what you give. Yep.
And it's really as
Yeah.
simple as that, right?
My
You move through life acting the way that you hope to be reciprocated upon.
You know what I noticed too about the tourists here lately is well, we're definitely like there's over tourism on Kauai for sure. The rental car companies, they put out a report maybe like 3 months ago here on Kauai. There's 7,000 rental cars on the road per day here on Kauai. 7,000. Okay. Um. So
and there's not many roads either.
yeah,
Like one that
you've been
goes
here. We
around the
got one
island.
2-lane road
Yeah.
that goes around the island.
Yeah. No, seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. Oh, see, I kind of lost track. What I was gonna say, but yeah, I had a good point too.
You
But I totally forgot. Ah, so cab, bro.
Over
No,
tourism.
there's too many tourists, you were saying.
Yeah, there's too many
There's all the
tourists.
rental cars, there's
Well,
7,000.
even the Hawaii Tourism Authority did a recent study, and they said the maximum amount of tourists Kauai can handle is 1.2 million per year, and we're at 1.7. So the infrastructure, the roadways, the shopping outlets, it can't sustain the volume beyond 1.2. So what happens when you overuse a place? It degrades it, right? And then, because I would visualize myself personally, if I'm going to a island destination, I want to go to a place where there's hardly anyone on the beach. What the fuck do you want to go to
100%.
Waikiki and like, oh, excuse me, is this spot taken? That's not a
Yep.
island vacation.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say now. So the type,
Well, Brian, that's
yeah,
exactly why my family we try to go to
yeah.
Kauai. I don't want any part of Oahu. Like nothing against that, but I just want to be somewhere where it's mellow, you know.
So with the tourists
Yeah. Go
nowadays,
ahead.
this is what I noticed with the people. Okay, from when I was waiting tables when I was about 18 years old, we had all like the baby boomers, you know, the old school guys, the older generation. Those are the guys that really established America with their businesses and whatnot. They made it really big. They prospered very well, and they were very, very humble and genuine people. I met a lot of people waiting tables through my life, and though that generation of people were amazing, wonderful, wonderful people. Now we're at a point where their wealth has passed on to their kids. Okay, those kids are the ones that are actually the assholes that are visiting Kauai now. So we don't have the problem with the older generation. It's this new generation that's coming up. 25, 35-year olds who inherited all their family's wealth and whatnot, thinking they're hot shit just because they're coming here and spending a little money. That we have a weird transition of type of people that's coming up. It's kind of fucked up. Like when I was waiting tables, those older generation, man, they're fucking awesome. I actually learned shit from those people. It's just can't learn shit from this generation.
Grumpy
Yeah.
Uncle Al. Yeah, no, I think we have spoke about this before. The symptoms and the things that you're seeing in Kauai is like a microcosm, though, of just a bigger issue. You know, or what I notice is that people they travel places, the people that are well off, and God bless them for that. But in certain cultures, like you're talking about, respect the culture. Nobody gives a shit. You're not valued by how much money you
Yeah.
have. Like if you have a lot of money, that's great, right? Like super cool. I mean, awesome. But that doesn't equate respect or equate like we don't. I say we because I kind of raised my kids the same way. Like I don't care. Like that doesn't motivate me. What motivates me is the type of your character, the type of person you are. And a lot of other cultures value the same shit. Like you could throw money on them, they're like, we don't want it. Like especially a lot of Polynesian or even in Guam, a lot of islander cultures are like, hey, what I don't. Why do I want to do that? I don't need that. I'm good. You know. And I think some of the some of the weller off, individuals don't understand that. Some do, but you only remember the assholes, right? You don't really remember. It's hard to remember this the nice people, So everybody be respectful, or Uncle Al will pay you a visit on Kauai. So Brian, to kind of wrap this up, you obviously have a metric shit ton of knowledge, and you took all your knowledge and put it into action into your company. And what is the name of your company? Because I absolutely love it.
So the name of the company I started 2 years ago is called Uncle Learn You How, which is actually a term that's very specific to Hawaii. Because when you have like that juvenile mentality of thinking that you know everything, not wanting to take advice from someone who's been there, done that, and then you make a huge mistake and realize later that you should have listened, right? So that's kind of the concept of it, is someone that thinks they know everything already but lacks the experience to actually know things, and having the life experience to be able to share things. So that's kind of the concept behind that company. Is when we came up in spearfishing, nobody taught us anything, right? We were using like bodyboard fins, Churchills, a milk jug for a float with a coat hanger bent, a high volume mask, no weight belt, surf shorts, and a fiberglass seahorse 3-prong. And you shot a fish and you ate it. You're like, oh shit, that tastes like a rubber slipper. I'm not eating that fish again. And then you shoot another one. You're like, hey, this one tastes pretty good. I'll shoot that one again, right? And then you kind of evolved as equipment came out, and then you tried different things, but you were never afraid to try new things. And you always did a lot of observing. Like I call spearfishing snorkeling, because you're observing things. You're observing the species, the companionship of the fish, the hunting tactics of the fish, how they relate to the bait, how they relate to the tide and the moon phase. That's what you should be doing the whole time, is snorkeling. And it's not until you actually shoot and land a fish that it becomes spearfishing. I've said this before, I think on Noob Spiro's podcast. But that's, if you look at it that way, to where you're an observer and you're trying to absorb as much as you can from that ocean environment, and that will in turn make you a better hunter. And when you're a better hunter, you can hunt more ethically with a sustainable focus in mind, and only take what you need and as much as you need, and leave the rest for other people. Let those species breed accordingly. That should be everyone's goal.
Well said. Well said. So if someone wanted to get in contact with you about building a gun for them, or some of the Manny sub items and the things that you on your site that you have that you personally recommend and use, how would they get a hold
Sure.
of you?
So, on Instagram, it's at Uncle Learn You How. And there's a link to the webpage, which is unclelearnyouhow.com. My phone number's on the webpage. I'm happy to speak to people as long as they're not just trying to waste my time and get information just so they can go buy it from Amazon, you know. But I'm happy to share knowledge with people. And, as you said earlier, the type of fish someone shoots, the behaviors that they demonstrate really shows you who they are as a person, right? So I'll bend over backwards to help people that are humble, that are seeking knowledge, that are trying to become better at something. And I'll write people off pretty quick if you're just trying to be an asshole and steal information so you can apply it to your own company or your own products.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Al, how do people get a hold of you?
I don't know if you want to get a hold of me.
If you get a hold of Al or Al gets a hold of you, it might be a problem.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm really nobody. I mean, I'm just a fun guy to follow on Instagram and laugh at. If you need a good laugh every once in a while, yeah, you can go follow my storyline. But
I share like half your shit with my brother because he's like a huge fan. Because he's like, I love that one guy, dude. It's so great. Because he's like, my brother's pretty high strung. Just like, fuck yeah, fuck yeah,
right
yeah.
on, man. I'm glad I can make somebody laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, like Brian said too.
Um,
Like, I'm more than happy to help, but you gotta show me like you actually tried though. If you haven't tried anything, you could just come asking me for help. I'll be like, no, go find out on your own. But if you tell me, hey, you know what, I tried this, I tried that, it hasn't worked out, I did this and this happened, I just can't figure it out. I'll be like, okay, I see you tried. And I admire that. I respect that. And I will help you. But for guys who just like want to be thrown into success right away, I'm like, no, you got to earn that shit. But yeah, like
yeah.
my Instagram is like Kiko Man, Uncle Show You How, you know, check it out. And then, yeah, like I said, I'm more than happy to help people too. It's fine.
And I will say, Al talks a big game, and he truly lives his aloha lifestyle. Because I remember when I came to the islands and you had messaged, hey, I'd like to meet you. I was like, I don't even know this dude. And I'm very cautious too, just because I got my family and stuff there. And you met me with the gift package, and just, you could tell immediately this is like a genuine fucking solid guy. So
It,
yeah, he might smack you and then he might take you out for lunch later. I don't know. So
but you
yeah.
expressed the same aloha to me too. I remember you gave me your dog tooth tuna jaw, man. That was mind blowing that you did that for me. I'm forever honored. And your dog tooth tuna jaw sits on my little trophy shelf
Ah,
to this day. And I admire that all the time. So thank you too. See, like that's the thing about social media. You meet a lot of great people like yourself. And look where we are now. And that was what, like 5, 6 years ago. So
yeah. Yeah.
I'm very thankful that we met and we have, became friends. Even San Diego, you stopped by, we talked story. We had a good time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, it was awesome to see you guys when you were in San Diego, and it was I was smiling from ear to ear when I saw your post. These motherfuckers came here and just shot a bluefin. And it was so great to see it all come together. Couldn't happen to a nicer group of guys. And I'm just glad to have linked up with you two as well on social media. And I encourage everybody to pay attention to these two gentlemen. And, Brian helped me a lot with my roller gun, and I took it out and shot it. And I will say, I am a believer now of that soft, beautiful, super stretchy rubber. Um, and yeah, so thank you guys for being on the show, and I wish you all the best. Take
right
care.
on, Brett.
Thanks for
Take
having
care.
us.
Yeah.
Take care.
So
Aloha.
okay. All right. Aloha, boys.